I'll entertain a motion to reconvene. Councillor Selk, all in favor?
Is Councillor Polk?
Councillor Court's gone, excuse him.
Yeah.
He's not well.
No.
So he's gone home. Okay. Hawken and Jeff, it's all yours.
I'll let Hawkins start off.
Okay. So there's item 6A in the agenda package, if that's how it works. That's what it's numbered anyway. So next week, we will be asking for a motion to approve the town's detailed reserves listing, which is the last 5 pages of that reserves item in your agenda package. So before we ask for a motion next week, we just wanted to get on the same page and just review the listing a little bit and the strategy that's gone into it. So just for the sake of reviewing a little bit, where do our reserves come from? Some of the reserves that we have, and we have about, in our Wood Gundy investment portfolio, we have about $3.6 million. And that's our reserves portfolio. And some of that is from budgeted items. We budget for future expenditures, certain future expenditures. But then also, we have surpluses in year that come up unexpectedly. We might have a $100,000 project, and just because we have that in budget, we don't spend every penny of it. We try to save still. And if we spend 90, we'll take the 10 extra and just tuck it away in reserves. Or sometimes we budget for revenues, for example, water, sewer, garbage. And this last year, for example, we received quite a bit more than we had anticipated, just because usage was higher. So we also put those into reserves as well. So everything that's collected over the years, we have in our reserves. Now we also spend from reserves as well. Every item in our detailed reserves listing has a designated purpose. So for example, we have a reserve item for snow removal. And so in a year where we have to spend extra money on snow removal, we have a little slush fund for that.
Would that be one like
We'll
this
be
year?
using when you approve
Yeah,
budget
yeah.
in 2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is
Just
true.
as a heads up, we'll be talking about that one again.
So on the first page of the reserves item there in your agenda, there's a balance sheet. This is a draft of our balance sheet at December 31st, 2017. And what I've done here is I've split the balance sheet items into 3 separate funds. One of them being our general fund, and then TCA stands for Tangible Capital Assets, so it's our capital fund. And then our reserves fund. And so what this shows is splitting them up. You know, if you look at it all together, we have about $52 million in assets that we manage. But of that 52 million, 46 million or so is the capital assets. And the other 3.6 million is our reserves. And so really there's only about $2.5 million left in our general operating fund. So just breaking it out like this, it just shows that our detailed reserves listing is actually fully funded. And it also shows that our general operations, they don't depend on our reserves to the extent that we do budget to spend from reserves, but other than that, we are able to set that $3.6 million that we have in Wood Gundy aside and continue on with our operations. So that's more or less why I wanted to show it like that. And then the next page, it just tells the story of our reserves from December 31st, 2016 to the end of 2017. So like I mentioned, we budget to add to our reserves and we budget to spend from reserves. And so the top item here were items in 2017 that we spent from reserves. And then the middle section, and I'm not going to go through each individual item, but the middle section there are budgeted additions to reserves in 2017. So we had in budget to add $508,000 to reserves and to spend $630,000. We actually had in budget to spend a little bit more than $630,000, but just with the timing of the pool project, and we try to be frugal, and so we spent a little bit less. So really that bottom section is more or less, I guess, what we want to get on the same page about. We've gone through our departmental actuals for 2017, and there were certain departments where we had some surpluses. Like I mentioned, in water, sewer, garbage, we had some additional revenues that we didn't budget for. Same thing in electrical. We also, in electrical, we didn't spend quite as much as we had budgeted. There's a few different other areas at the ice center. We had some extra revenue and didn't spend as much, so we have a surplus there. And there's a few different areas here with surpluses. And so what we've done here is we've taken where the money came from, where the surplus came from, and then in the detailed reserves listing, what we do is we designate it for that specific department.
Paula, where does public health and the welfare surplus come from? What is that?
That is a fund that allows us to have $500 every other year given to the ladies' auxiliaries, I mean, you should call it that, it's auxiliary, or to the hospital community fund that I have.
This surplus is made up of what accounts? Do you remember, Hawken, how we got a surplus in that 2017?
This is basically, we didn't spend as much as we had budgeted for weed and pest control
Oh, this one?
in 2017. And so that's where that came from.
So that's another fund I'm thinking of.
That is in that.
It is part
It
of it,
is in-
isn't it?
Yeah, if you look on the detailed listing, there's a $20,000
That's right.
item in there, and the interest off of that is meant to cover
It's like an endowment fund
those
that we
annual
have.
amounts that we pay to those organizations. Yeah. So, there's also some incomplete projects that we carry forward. You know, like there's the coat of arms project. We started it this year, we had $5,000 in budget and we hardly spent any on it. And so we want to carry that forward so that the funding is available next year.
The card murals, is that part of it?
We moved that out actually when we
Oh,
did
did
the
you?
Norway budget, yeah. But it's made up of just a number of small things that are either half done or, you know, there are things that we'll do in 2018, but we have the funding, we already taxed for it in 2017, so instead of taxing again, we simply bring it forward to fund it. It's a pretty small amount.
Question, Councillor Brown?
So on here, it's dugouts at Redford, $5,000. What did we do at Redford?
So we've been reserving money for that,
Yeah.
Yes.
for future expense.
Okay, so that was not spent.
No, it's
Okay.
We're
being
saving
held.
Okay.
Yeah, we're
Okay.
saving it, yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Thanks.
So, that's how we've gone about I guess, assigning the designated purposes. And so I think what we want to get out of this is, you know, the council doesn't have to designate the purpose of the reserves that way. Just because we had extra money from electrical or from our utilities doesn't mean that they have to go to the electrical department or the department that they came from.
They can be reassigned.
Now, there's a risk of having this conversation after a number of delegations looking for funding, by the way.
Right.
But
You could spend it on a mammoth museum or whatever, so.
But we actually wanted to go through these because there are some, while they're on the list, they have a historic intended use, and I wanted to just go through those quick so that we knew they were intended to go somewhere, but it's well within your discretion to change that end game, Councillor Bengry.
But I like the way this is done, so you can see item by item. I really appreciate that, you know.
Mayor?
I appreciate transparency, but I can also see that in reserving money, sometimes the use might be greater in a different department than when the money is brought back into.
But we can reallocate it, but I like the way it's,
No, it's very transparent.
yes.
But essentially, I am wondering, at the end of the year, after the transparency is there, is it not more important to have it in general surplus that can be reallocated to the projects that most need the money?
Well,
I think that's what Councillor Bengry is saying.
no, but what Jeff is saying, when you have this is very transparent.
Totally.
And when you have a delegation coming in and asking for $7,500 or $8,000, they look at this and they say, hey, you know, we can do it this way or that way. And like you said, if we put it into a general reserve account at the end of the year, then it's up to the council to control.
So one thing to be clear is, you have $3.6 million in reserves. Every penny of that is under your discretion. It
That's
actually
right.
doesn't matter what it's on that next list. That's what at one point, the people around the table and their collective wisdom determined it should go towards.
That's
And
right.
it's probably good,
Exactly.
but it isn't set in stone.
No, this,
Councillor Selk next, then the mayor.
So, I guess in the spirit of trying to move the discussion forward, Jeff, you said there was some things you wanted to point out to us that we could
Yeah.
mull over. We don't have to make any decisions on them tonight.
No.
So maybe you could just point out those items.
Sure.
and-
So I'll tell you, the end game here is when we do the audit, you will be receiving an updated reserves listing based on our conversation that you will approve by motion. So that's where the motion comes into play here, where you're going to approve these, okay? So it's not tonight, but it's when we do presentation of the audit. And that's when we present that for your approval. But a couple of things, if I go down on that second page, there's a category called surpluses added to reserves. So that's where we had surplus in 2017, that we need to know how we should allocate this going forward. You do not have what I would call no, there's a word for it here. You don't have unspecified reserves, undesignated reserves.
That's right.
General reserve. Everything is allocated to some type of use or future thing.
That's right.
And that's a good thing in the fact that where your ratepayers can say, hey, Councillor, why are you charging me this much in taxes when you got 3.6 million in the bank? That doesn't seem right. You shouldn't have to, maybe put $1 million of that towards taxes, knock my taxes down, right? So if you end up with these huge unrestricted reserves, then you start to be subject to scrutiny saying, if it's just sitting there for no reason, how do you justify your level of taxation? So over the last couple of years especially, we've made a point of saying, what's this for and what are we saving for and what do we want to do? So you don't have unrestricted reserves. So let me explain, for example, cemetery perpetual care. We budget that at 0. And then anything that comes in is intended to be reserved so that that fund builds up where the interest off that fund is funding the perpetual care of the cemetery. That's the point. And so it's building a perpetual fund. Now, does it have to? Nope. But that's what it's, I just wanted to give you a heads up, that's what it's for. electrical surplus, that is a genuine surplus above and beyond our budget, but I have a recommendation for it. And it's a temporary recommendation. My recommendation is that we put that as a restricted reserve for the purposes of moving forward the Axia proposal. Now, if we don't need it, we change it as soon as we know we don't need it. It doesn't have to stay in that department. We do have a lot of capital needs year to year. This is an interesting line because 2 years ago, that department broke even.
Yeah.
There wasn't a surplus out of that department. Actually, I should be fair, I think it had was it 45,000?
40-some-thousand.
About a $40,000 profitability in that department, but we had some large, we had to fix a truck, we had a couple things break down, so that is a intensive capital needs department, but right now we sat at the end of 2017 with a 200,000 surplus. My recommendation is we can potentially move the fiber to the home project along if we have some capital ready to go right away.
Because
If
you
we
need to
get-
put all the poles.
If we
and
get 3 months down the road and don't need it, let's have a discussion about where it should go. But it'd be nice to be able to talk to the Axia and say, look, if you guys are ready to go and we have to sweeten this by a few $1,000s or whatever, we gotta put a little cash in to move it along, it's there.
Jeff, I thought when we approved the Axia, just on that subject, they were funding their own program. The funding was, and they were gonna add to our electrical system.
So how that's been working is, they want to use aerial installation. So
Right.
they want to use poles for all the fiber. And they're wise, they've come to us and said, but you're doing a conversion. Why would we pay to do all of your conversions? They're saying, should we pay some? You bet. Should we participate at some level? Yep, we should. But if you were already going to change all those poles out in 3 or 4 years, why are you asking us to front the cost for all those now? And it's hard to argue that, I get it. We are planning on spending our money to change all those poles out in the next few years, and so they're suggesting that there might be a cost share there. So that's what we're looking at.
Councillor Selk.
So Jeff, didn't we sort of talk about buying the poles and
Yeah.
doing it because they can do
Right.
it faster? So is that, have they agreed to that?
They didn't. It's a start. They don't feel it's an equitable split. We've actually, our last discussion was that they would look at talking to Ballard, a big line utility contractor, about coming in and doing all the labor to get all that done right away. And then we would look at our contribution of materials if we needed to, and if we needed to contribute a bit to that whole contractor piece. That would push our conversion ahead a lot. That would actually help our changeover, because they want to do about 40-something poles.
Right.
It would expedite our changeover dramatically, and may be worth it to us even still, to contribute a little bit financially to offset the labor costs too. They've taken that back. I haven't heard from them on that most recently.
And if they brought that in, that would release our linemen, wouldn't it?
Well, they wouldn't, so my 1.5 guys wouldn't have to try and plant 40 poles in a year, which they just logistically can't do.
Yeah.
Right.
It can't happen, right?
By doing that, we're upgrading a significant portion of our electrical
Extra.
system.
Yeah, huge amount. It would put us probably a couple years ahead of where we would be otherwise, so.
So it would behoove us to take that
Yeah.
electrical surplus and do that.
So that's what I'm saying for now. Maybe that piece is 50 grand, maybe, I don't know yet. I don't know what Ballard's quote's gonna come back at. So my recommendation on that is at least for the next few months, maybe that's how we reserve that, is in electrical reserves. And then by a motion of council, we can release it for its intended purpose at the time. It doesn't give us carte blanche at this time to use it because we don't know what the amount is. But we know it's there for a motion of council at the time. So that's on the electrical. The other one I wanted to talk about was land sales and levies. So you see 66,000. Whenever we sell land or whenever we collect levies on land, well, by levies, we have to reserve those. They're for something. That's their whole intent. They were levied to pay a future cost. So that portion will be levied in the land sales. We have always historically, and that can change, but we've always put that in land reserves for the purposes of improving or purchasing land later. So we have cash available if something comes up where we need to add utility or to purchase land. And so my recommendation is we don't consider that amount. That goes to be reserved in land reserves, as we've done. The other big one here is this surplus allocated to major utility. This is a combination of two things. One is, like Hawkins said, much higher revenues than expected. A hot, dry year particularly will do that. You just do a lot more water. And so we had a lot of surplus in that department. And I look at a couple, I want to suggest maybe a major thing here, is this actually might give us our first chance of putting a big chunk down for a future water and sewer plant.
Exactly.
We don't have, I mean, we have major utility reserves. They're not for anything specific, but this could be something set aside, maybe not the whole amount, but a good chunk of that amount to say, this is that seed money for that water plant in 15 years. Because it's going to be a $15 million touch. And so at least by then, maybe we have a couple million, you know, that we're starting to parlay and match with Fed and provincial money and doing things like that.
Councillor Selk?
Okay, I gotta ask, we seriously need to have a conversation about what our agreement is with the county for
With the
water.
county, yeah.
And I would like to suggest that be sooner than later.
Yeah,
Because
okay.
clearly, every time this comes up, somebody else comes in and says, well, the county says they're gonna give us water. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
Glad to hear that.
Right, right. So what we do have, just for agreements, so you know, with the blood reserve, the agreement says that they will pay their proportionate, whatever their proportionate use of our total water treatment is in a year, they pay that in capital to any major upgrades of the water or sewer facility. So that's already in the agreement. The county one doesn't expressly say that, but the previous council, and it might even been when Councillor Court was here, was starting down that road of talking about what that capital would look like between everybody and the time it was to be done. And at that point, I can't speak to today's council, county council, there was an appetite to be significant capital partners in that.
Yeah.
In fact, it was being pushed by the county a little bit to say, look, when the time comes, well, then it was now we want to be significant partners, but the answer was when the time comes, be significant partners. But whether we're 50% or 90%, this money is a drop in the bucket to that end number. So, agreed, we need to have that discussion about that agreement. But that's my recommendation on that, is maybe we look at that as major utility capital, but not that we use to fund our construction year to year, because we use some of that major utility capital now to fund the next year's construction. I'm suggesting this is earmarked and restricted for that facility.
Agree.
And if we have these kind of surpluses, well, we don't have these kind of surpluses for a long term because we adjust the budget. But we also can't account for weather and use variability, we just don't know.
Could go the other way.
Yeah, it could go the other way as well, that's right. So we are conservative in those estimates, so it doesn't go the other way.
Jeff, one thing, we could go the other way. In the budget additions in column 2, 2017, a transmission rider of $36,000. Now, what's going to happen with that, with this new electrical situation that we got?
Well, are you talking about the balancing pool issue?
Yes,
Well, the balancing pool, we've installed a rider to cover that.
okay,
And so that should wash for us. We're going to take in additional revenues and pay the rider.
okay.
The transmission rider is much more volatile. Quick tutorial, and I'm going to get this only partially right, so bear with me because I didn't prepare for this. The reason we have a transmission rider where we save money every year is the big utilities calculate their transmission riders on a weekly basis. So they are doing them constantly. So however the market's fluctuating, they're changing theirs. And so we only change ours, or we only even look at it almost annually.
Never?
Once every year.
We look at it every year. And so depending on the market, sometimes we owe a little more or we make a little more. And so we bank that addition when we have it and then we spend it when we're short.
Yeah.
The intent of the previous council was to take the spikes out of the billing.
Right.
It was to try and say, oh man, we were way behind, so here's a huge rider. Oh, we were way over, here's a huge credit. It was, we're going to put that money in the bank, and when we're low, we're going to spend it, and when we're high, we're going to bank it. And try and keep that steady. So that one is simply just a matter of how our crystal ball is with markets. And it's not always fantastic.
Now, doesn't the fire hall and those buildings come under capital tangible assets?
For the county, isn't it? Do we book any of the fire hall? Oh, we do the fire hall.
We share some with them.
We share some of
We do the
that,
fire
yeah,
hall,
yeah.
But that doesn't come
We
under
only
tangible.
we reserve $7,000 a year for replacement of the fire hall.
7,000?
Yeah,
It's not a lot, is it?
no.
Well, we do reserve that amount for equipment replacement too, as of 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
3 years ago.
We also, we reserve, we've been
The
reserving
trucks.
40,000
For
for
the trucks.
replacing the fire
Yeah,
truck
for
as well.
for equipment, yeah, that's what I meant,
Yeah.
fire truck equipment, yeah. So with that 907,000 we're talking about, I mean, I just addressed 700,000 of it in a couple of items.
Right.
Those are the only recommendations. A couple of those, like cemetery and land sales, they always have a designated end. And then I would suggest on those other two that we keep them in their category for future use. And all the rest are fairly minor. I mean, what we do with the 9,000 here, there. I mean, a $9,000 golf surplus, trust me, we're gonna need $9,000 in the next few years.
Beyond
Golf
quick.
surplus. That's like a tenth of a mower. It's just not much. So we're inviting any input on those surpluses and where they should go prior to us preparing that reserves listing.
Do we have a policy on fleet replacement?
We do not replace it on a time schedule, it's
No.
simply a condition and need
Yeah.
every year.
Condition need?
Yeah.
Okay.
There.
Personally, I would totally agree with the presentation Jeff made, and I really think the electrical, and the major utility upgrade and the land sales should stay in their category as reserve. That would be a motion I would make forward.
Recommendation for the next council meeting?
Well, and again, you can leave it, we'll take your feedback, we'll prepare the statement of reserves,
Yeah.
and you'll approve it by motion next meeting.
Yeah,
Right.
so I think next week we should have a motion to the
Councillor
effect.
Selk?
There would, if we're trying to crystal ball a little bit, likely be a need for some money for land purchases going forward.
You mean, yeah, okay.
So,
we have land reserves for land purchases. What's our amount in there, Huck? I want to say it's in the fours, or am I way too optimistic?
400,000.
400,000 or so.
Let me just find it.
I think I saw something like 400,000 or so.
There's about 300,000.
Or 300,000.
Pardon me?
Plus the 60,
Okay.
Well, yeah, we'll move to
plus the
60.
66 would be
We
almost
need to have a
400.
motion to
Can
extend,
do, yeah.
I'll make
Yeah.
that motion till 9 o'clock.
motion to extend till 9 o'clock. Okay,
But there would be almost 400,000 there with the
Right.
66,000.
So you do have a little bit in land reserves now.
I don't know how much land you're talking about buying.
Anyway, there is a recommendation to council to keep the allocation
Those three items.
for those three items
okay. We have the recommendation, all in favor?
as per their accounts right now.
All in favor? Okay, there you go.
Any other questions on reserves? Again, we'll bring in updated as part of the audit. Oh, one other thing. Next Tuesday, Councillor Drew, Councillor Selk, Councillor Bengry. Are you available to meet with the auditor prior to council meeting?
I think it's me.
No, we looked at, it's those three.
What time would that be, Jeff?
3:30?
3:30.
I have that ASHA conference in Red Deer next
Oh,
week.
okay.
Cannot stand in
Can
your,
we
The
do
mayor
that?
could go in your place if you're okay.
Yes.
as an
Okay.
ex officio.
What about Councillor Drew? You're the schedule, we gotta check out that work.
It's all about me.
Only,
3:30 should be okay.
Which day
Just
is
send
that?
me an email.
Next week, next Tuesday before council meeting.
sure,
Should be,
Okay.
Well, I stand in your place.
We'll send an
Councillor.
email out.
Yeah, ex officio.
yeah,
I
that's,
have to work around my schedule.
You've never had a conflict with
Crazy
Councillor Selk's
busy.
schedule, it's working out good.
I'm not gonna have you walk at 3:30, eh?
Exactly. I have to go at 2:30 for a walk.
Mayor?
Personally, I would really like to thank the financial department, Hogan. I surely appreciate to see where the reserve have gone and to see that everything is allocated. In the past, we had a bulging amount somewhere at the end of the year, and we used to take whenever we need it, or replenish when we need it. But this is no longer tied to that factor of unpredictability. So I really appreciate the way the accounting is done. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're comfortable you're looking after the money, Paula.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks, Hawken.
Thank you very much.
Like I said, we'll bring all that back in a week.
Okay. So, under other business, 7A, transportation ownership position, Councillor Selk, would you like to discuss that with us?
I would.
Go ahead.
Okay. Let me just explain it in sort of general terms. I'm sure you already know it, but the transfer station, the Chief Mountain Solid Waste Authority seems to think that that currently belongs to the town and that it's ours, but the ongoing maintenance and stuff, they want to turn it back to the town to look after it. Now, I'm still of the mind that I'm not sure that we actually own it, that it belongs, I think it belongs to the authority.
Yes.
And they still want to turn it back to the town in future, months as we move towards a commission. And my question to the authority was, why would the town take that on? Because it's the busiest transfer station in the authority. Because we take garbage from the blood tribe and from the county and from the town. And so why would we do that? If we're going to take it on and it's going to be ours, then we want it for the citizens of Cardston. Period. And Jeff, do you want to throw some?
What do you want me to throw at it?
Jeff and I had this conversation a couple of weeks ago about, where we're at with respect to this particular facility. And I think, Jeff, you were kind of singing from the same song sheet.
Yeah, I've been preaching to the authority for a while that as this authority becomes a commission and is looking to expand its responsibility, that the transfer stations need to be one of those requisitioned pieces, because then every community is paying their share of the operations. Right now, we hire the contractor, we do the maintenance, we take care of everything up there, utilities, you name it. And we do get a small contribution from, I don't remember, Jill, do you remember the number every year from the county and the blood tribe for the transfer station?
It's based off what we spend on it.
Oh, okay, so,
It's a portion of it.
but it's just a couple $1,000, isn't it?
And, yeah,
So it's
$5,000.
really, really small amount in the overall cost. And my position all along has been, the commission should have ownership of these and requisition appropriately. I get my garbage picked up at the curb. I rarely have to go to the transfer station. My parents have to go twice a week, because that's where it has to go. Or they can put it in a dumpster down on Main Street. I won't implicate them in that, but I'm just saying, we handle a lot of garbage from outside of our jurisdiction that we pay the cost for. This is another one of those times when we're paying a huge amount percentage-wise of the cost for something serving a larger region. And the commission may have a way to equalize that a little better. But they certainly would like to abdicate that responsibility.
Sure.
And partially it's because they're not in great condition, these transfer stations. They require a lot of capital in the next few years, so I get it.
Yeah. In fact, it's been stated that our transfer station needs some major work.
Yeah.
And they're waiting to give it back to the town so that we bear the expenses. So I guess what I'm asking is, if the council is okay with this, I'm going to lobby vehemently against us taking this dead horse on.
I'll support you in
Yeah, I
that.
think so too.
I always supported the position that it is the commission's responsibility and the authority's responsibility to look after those transfer stations.
Mayor, we had this discussion last council on the ownership of that and the repairs required for it, if we remember.
My point of view, when they proposed the idea of the commission, I thought that it was understood that the transfer stations were going to be part of it.
Yeah.
But it seems to me there is a reversal of position at this time, which is unfortunate.
Well, it keeps coming back, if you will, Mayor, and I think the authority keeps thinking that if we keep bringing it back long enough, someone will capitulate.
Well, we won't.
So,
How's that?
thank you.
So
I
what's-
just wanted to know the flavor of council, because I
Yeah.
just
No.
want to make sure I'm not riding off on this project alone.
No, you're not on your own.
Use the right voice for that dark cloud and
So-
long.
My question is to Jeff.
They don't like me very much.
Do we have this in writing that they own the transfer station somewhere? Because it would be
I
nice.
did at one time.
Jill and I are texting back and forth on this. I couldn't go down and pull that right now, but I could do a little homework.
I think it would be nice to get that in place so we know that, and then Councillor Selk can have that when he goes back and vehemently defends our position with
But I'm
some evidence.
surprised that they don't have some kind of historical record.
Well, sometimes it's convenient not to find
Well,
it.
and we will, I didn't come prepared, but we
Yeah,
will
no,
find
sure.
out.
But I
Surely
think
we
the
have.
authority should have some
Yeah.
historical record,
Yeah.
minutes or whatever,
Yeah.
something.
Okay.
How
Kind
many
of
times did they
authoritative.
change secretaries there?
Well, whatever.
So that could be an issue too, so.
Well,
Conveniently
This
disappears.
may or may not come up as part of our discussion on the 11th. I just want to know that
We'll support you.
everyone's in favor of not taking on this dead horse.
No.
Jeff will get that information.
Yeah,
for you
when we
next
find
week
your
or two.
host, email all of you so you have the
Okay.
briefing information.
Thank
I
you.
mean, from a fairness point of view, it's unfair to bear a burden that should be shared by 3 or 4 other jurisdictions.
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
Absolutely. Okay, 7B, Blood Tribe Land Management, they've got a letter in here. Have you all read this?
I was
Let's
interested.
have some discussion on this.
I was interested in that seminar. I must say, 2 years ago, I went to the CAPA conference, and I learned tons at that conference. Was actually pleasantly surprised how well prepared they were for that conference. It was so informative. But my point of view is there's maybe another way to do a donation for a door prize or something like that, that could be non-monetary. More like golf course pass or something of that sort.
It's a great idea.
So let's-
At monetary, it doesn't fit the policy,
Yeah,
but it doesn't say that we cannot gift something.
So we're
exactly.
being supportive.
Yeah,
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
So
That's a good idea.
when Jeff and I talked this afternoon, and we thought that this would be a good thing to donate an 18-hole golf pass, including the use of the golf cart. And I think that would be fitting for this.
yeah.
So, any recommendation to do this?
I'll make that recommendation.
Okay, Councillor Selk make a recommendation to donate a 18-hole pass and use of the cart, golf cart?
Seasonal pass?
No,
No,
18 holes.
It's
What
A1.
day?
The one
Yes,
18-hole
one.
pass.
Gosh.
You're really feeling good.
Oh,
there.
no.
You're generous,
Surplus.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor? All right, there you have your answer. Good, thank you. All right, next item here, we need to,
Question on that. In the budget we were just looking over, it said that there was allocated $7,000 to go to the golf course, but it was never given to them.
You mean the airport?
Sorry.
Airport we're talking.
I'm still wanting to play golf. Yeah, the airport. There was $7,000 in reserves to be given to the airport. I'm just wondering, that's essentially, I mean, they're asking actually for less. Well, depends. The first one was less. But my question is that money, it's there. Is that money,
Okay.
what was that money to be given to them for?
Okay, so let me pull up, 1 second here. Here's something big for you. Something in 2016 didn't get spent.
perfect,
And so it's
something.
carried forward. My guess is that number is about what line painting is.
Oh, yes.
So I'm wondering if they were still okay and we didn't paint lines, but we have line painting in 2018. So my guess is that could be brought forward to fund it in 2018.
Okay.
I think we're budgeting about,
You should, can you tell me where that is?
it's on the.
Detailed reserve listing,
Oh, this
December
was the page
21st,
number here.
2017.
It doesn't show in the surplus added to
It,
reserve.
No, because it was in
410.
2016.
Yeah.
410,
It wasn't
Alright.
spent, right?
Okay.
That's what I'm saying, it
Okay,
wasn't
I get
spent
you.
previously, it's been
I
rolled
get you.
over.
4-10-263.
Yeah,
Yes,
It
okay.
was, oh wait, I'm looking at the wrong one.
4-10-262.
Sorry.
262?
Yeah.
There's a 7,000 and 263. I'm guessing we either didn't do upgrades on the runway, like potholes and oiling or something, or we didn't do lines.
I think it was a line painting.
So if I'm not mistaken, this year we have, oh boy, I didn't bring my budget. We have $16,000 or something budgeted for expenses out there for line painting and a few things already. So this could be brought forward to help fund that.
I just caught,
Yeah,
we caught it, and then I just wondered if that,
yeah.
because I mean, they're asking for the 5,000 for the ACO trailer, 2,800 for the web camera. It just, doing the math a little bit here.
Well, one thing, this is just maybe a pet peeve of mine.
And we have to
The
figure
term
out-
is used that we save a lot of money by doing this, but it's not a
No.
mandatory expense.
No.
You
It's
save
not.
most money by not doing it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
one of the
exactly.
problems we have out there now is there's no water.
Yeah.
And so, we're a little bit ahead of the cart's a little bit ahead of the horse with facility of washrooms when there's no water.
Exactly.
And there will be a cost, trust me, when it's time to hook that water up. That's not getting there free.
Right.
That will be considerable.
Because the water may come,
Well,
the water may come,
care of it
well, the water line will come to the property line possibly, but after that,
yeah.
guess who is going to have to do the rest?
Well, that's why I asked if they had any fundraising, if they,
Yeah. One thing, I talked to Mr. George Porter. He couldn't make it tonight because they're doing the by-election in Glenwood tonight, and he's the returning officer. Otherwise, he would have been the one giving the presentation. One thing I told Mr. Porter was, George, I know some of the stuff is timely, and I know that
Yeah.
there's a long list here. We're about to engage in negotiations with the county on how we're sharing costs of these
That's right.
exact types of pieces of infrastructure long-term. I'm not sure the town wants to jump in and say, hey, we're gonna fund everything right now, when a year from now, we may have a much more equitable cost-sharing arrangement. It may be a little premature, and George fully understands. Obviously, there's some time sensitivities on the trailer,
right.
Yeah. that
and I
might
get
be-
that. We're not their only option. For, just as an aside, we're simply not there. There must be other options out there. But I just told George that this is something that needs to be hammered out in an intermunicipal collaboration
Yeah.
framework, because it is ambiguous on the one hand, as far as ownership and costs, taxation, utilities, rights of way, all that stuff is ambiguous right now.
Because the revenues are all going to the county,
So the
and all the
county takes
expenses
tax revenues, yeah.
are coming to us, except there's a share, cost sharing somewhat with the county.
And for those of you who've been around, well, that's improved dramatically over the last few years.
Yeah.
Councillor Bengry's been on that board for a while, and Councillor Lacey sits on that committee, and that has increased a lot. It's great. It's been great. My feeling is that we're about to embark on we're overhauling the funding model for that airport. As much as I know you all want to be very nice people, granting a lot of this for the airport may be a bit premature financially.
Go ahead, Mayor.
I'm just wondering, because they have that opportunity with a trailer, it's $5,000, but I don't see any participation from the county there. And I was wondering, if it was a shared participation for the purchase of the trailer, I think it would be more palatable. Yeah.
To sort of put into that, when they talk about this actual trailer, it's gonna take a big unit to move this unit. It's a $40-some-thousand trailer set up as, a trailer. And they're going to go to the county to see if they would use their big moving equipment move this trailer.
Except that they haven't done that yet. So we buy
Well,
the equipment and they don't know if it's going to be moved.
Councillor Lacey is aware of this.
They also are giving this presentation to the county.
Yes.
Yeah, George told me this, they're
Okay.
on, it's soon too, if it's not on their next meeting, it's soon, I think.
So are you
Yeah.
So
suggesting?
that would be the $5,000 kind of matching with the moving of the trailer.
But, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Councillor.
I just thought when Scott made his presentation that he talked about the $5,000 included it getting,
Is it 4,000 in one movie?
4,000 for the.
Yeah, I think that's what he was saying, 4,000 in one movie.
so it's $5,000 all together moved,
Doesn't say that.
but that's, I think that I'm pretty sure that's what.
Yeah.
Because it's, I don't have the notes there. It just
It just
says
says total
$5,000.
anticipated cost is 5,000, you
Yeah.
know.
So my point of view, if the county was willing to share that, I mean, if that is so time sensitive, how do you not help them? As for the rest, I agree, intermunicipal needs to come into action.
Any other thoughts on this? What are you suggesting that we do then, Gerry? You want to go around the table?
Yes,
Paula, what are your feelings?
Well, I support giving them money to help with their building, but I am all about meeting with the county halfway. I feel like as long as the county is stepping forward and putting X amount of dollars, I have no problem putting taxpayer money towards this as long as we're in collaboration with them, because it is for both of us, essentially. That's kind of where I sit.
Okay, Councillor Bengry?
Well, serving on the committee, it's hard for me to say yes, it's hard for me to say no. I'm looking at the enhancement of the airport and the services it's starting to require.
Mhm.
We give, like EMS, what's the cost of life? They're moving those kind of provisions out to an airport facility because they can control the landing, they control the looky-lookers, you know, so there's no traffic intervention. And so the county is going to have to be involved in that, in the condition of that road to and from. I'm looking at, like Scott Turner said in his representation, where do the pilots, you know, where do they relax, wait for the helicopter? Can that trailer be used as a service area for a patient in the move? You know, is it a valuable thing that we have out there? Right now, we have that old gas bar building.
Yeah, it's not much, is it?
It's not much, but it serves a purpose for what it has been used for.
Yeah.
But now we're
It's
starting to
minimal.
enhance the services. And I look at the county needs to be involved in this, because when you have 10 or 15 crop dusters coming in there a year, they're not crop dusting gardens in gardens, they're crop dusting crops in the county. So, you know, they need to be involved in this.
Absolutely. Yeah. Councillor Selk, what are you thinking?
Okay, now,
Torn between.
obviously I'll put the dev hat on it, and I get quite enthused about the notion that if they're using it for flying school, skydiving, you know, if there's other things that are gonna actually use the airport for economic development for our area, I can get behind this, but I do agree we'd like to see, you know, I think we'd like to see the county as a 50% participant, however the costs are, but barring that, you know, I don't know that we want to lose this deal.
Yeah.
So maybe we have to go all in.
Councillor Drew?
Yeah, I agree. I think that we need to be a part of this. I'd sure like the MD to come and meet us halfway. But if not, I think it's something that's very valuable for the community, so.
Mayor?
Personally, I feel that the item number 1 should be supported with the support of the county. And as for the other items, 2 to 7, I would say they require an intermunicipal conversation.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
So I would move towards item 1 with cooperation of the county, because I think it's the only fair way to do it.
So, question, then I'll defer to you,
But Jack
Councillor.
brought up an interesting thing, and I'm not for the spoken environment, I am, bad in the water. What do you do with a trailer with bathroom when you have no water?
Yeah, that's.
But the facility is there to be enhanced.
Maybe they'll have to get a holding tank and haul water at some point. You know, that's always a possibility too. Pardon me? Septic field. Yeah,
But at
exactly.
this time,
But,
they are functioning without water
Yeah.
and without sewer facilities, so I don't think that changes. What
No.
it is, it gives them the room, the space, and the opportunity to have
yeah,
an asset that I can get
At a reasonable price.
very, very reasonable price, a fraction of the cost.
yeah.
Now,
So I think if that is truly the story, then I can see us supporting it.
Now, the question I have, before I pass it on to you, are we talking, asking the county to pay half of this $5,000? Or are we saying we're gonna pay the $5,000, they're gonna pay the moving costs, which are pretty close to what the cost of the trailer is itself? Is that what we're asking, or
Well-
suggesting?
The question is a $5,000 include the move, or does it not? This is we are not so clear about, so we need to get clarification. So we could really make a recommendation in principle
Yeah,
until we get further information.
okay, yeah, I'm okay with that. All right. I'm in support of this number 1, I'm supportive, but I think like Councillor Selk, the first thing I'm thinking is, this is gonna enhance our community. It's gonna, if we're gonna get a training center for parachuters, training center for helicopters, and then have the stars, I think that this is something that's good for the community, so I'm in support of this.
Just so I don't forget, STARS is asking for dates. I think they're gonna come speak to you in May about why they moved and what's
Yes.
going on there. So
Good.
we'll know a little
Sounds
bit more
good.
about that soon.
So Councillor,
Jeff, one question. Where would the government sit with this? I mean, we are the managers of that, and they are the owners of the land. Would they,
We have a license to occupy for the purposes of operating an airport.
And
As
that's
long
it.
as what we're doing supports that end, I don't see
Then
that
we're
we're gonna
okay.
care.
okay, I will entertain a recommendation. Councillor Bengry?
you want a recommendation or do you want a motion?
Well, we can't make a motion, it's gotta be recommendation.
Recommendation that we support the airport,
Item number 1?
item number 1
Okay.
on their wish list.
Up to 50%?
Up to 50% with the county.
Yeah.
Do we want to go that route?
But you have-
No, I don't think so.
I'm a little concerned about going that route right now.
Well, my point of view, we need to figure out, are we going to end up with the cost of moving this thing? Or is it part of the 5,000? We have no idea. So if you do it in principle until we get clarification.
Yeah, I think that's the way we should go.
To do it in principle, up to $5,000.
That's
Yeah, okay.
That's their recommendation.
Okay,
Hold
so
that,
Go
Joe.
up to 5,000.
that's a friendly amendment from the mayor?
Yes. Do you accept?
Okay,
Yes.
got that, Joe? All right, all in favor? Okay, thank you. All right, so, discussion on,
Can I ask you something?
yep,
Just wanted to know if the motion need to speak to the item 227 to be brought to intermunicipal.
I don't think so. The only action
Okay.
here is supporting item 1, so
Yes.
there's no action on
Yes.
2 to 7.
All right,
yeah,
thanks.
not at this point in time.
Well, 2 to 7 come up with that.
Municipal
But that will
share,
have to come later.
yeah, exactly. Okay, so, any discussion on, what Mr. Stranding had to, okay? Okay, the next one on Mr. Tolman and Mr. Hawley's presentation, what are we feeling here? Any thoughts, Mayor?
My thought are really that unless they have seed money to proceed the same way as for any project, unless you have engineering costs involved, it's the same kind of idea. Unless you spend a certain amount of money to get a sense of the project, you will never know what the project is. And that comes with money. So what we need to decide as a council, is that worth pursuing, yes or no?
Okay.
I'm not a good one to ask, because
Of course you biased.
No, that's
And you should
okay.
be.
I want to hear what you have to say anyway.
There is,
Please.
there is
We'll go around the table on this, okay?
positive about the idea, and you should talk about it.
well, I've been excited about this since Shane and I had this conversation a month ago, simply because it's an opportunity for us to tell, as he said, a history about this area that no one else knows about. In fact, I mean, the citizens of this town primarily
don't
know
know.
about it.
No?
And it's an opportunity for us to, again, bring another attraction, bring something else to the table where, let's face it, we're trying to develop industry, and about the only industry we can develop in this area is tourism. And so if we can, as the mayor said, put some seed money forward, see where we're at, and then let them go to work on getting grant funding for the larger portion of this, I think we'd be silly not to do it.
So just keep in mind that we're asking at this point in time for a recommendation for, in principle, to support this project. And then it'll be that seed money of the $7,500 that we'll have to decide if we can go that route.
I had a feeling they needed both.
Yeah, they do need both, they do.
Both.
Councillor Drew, what are your feelings here?
I think it's exciting. I wanted a little bit more information about the funding and the percentage of what we would have to come up with and what.
I think that will be forthcoming.
Yeah.
He doesn't know.
No, I think that's part of the ongoing research that they'll have to do.
But,
No, finish your thoughts before we move on.
no, I think, I know they didn't want to throw out a number and say, this is how much, but in my opinion, I think this is a $3 to $6 million project. So,
Hang on in my mind too.
yeah. So
That's why I asked him about the Remington comparison.
Right, so, I mean, can you get other monies to help us with that initial, do we need $100,000 for us to get the grants? And like, I just don't know. But
Yeah,
in principle, I
that's
think it's
something we'll have to find
it's
out.
a great idea, I'd like to support it.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, Mayor?
Well, I really think that all the unknown will become clarified once we have a planning project proposal
Yeah.
on the front of our eyes. Until then,
It's all guessing.
we all will guess,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's
Councillor Bengry?
unfortunate that it costs a certain amount of money,
Yeah,
but the seed money is in any project that you want to pursue,
yeah.
you need seed money.
Yeah, well, this is different than other requests. This could be a major economic development boon to this town. And we have to consider sometimes taking chances on things like that. We can't be always over-conservative. And so, my feeling, I'm really in support of this. That's my feelings. I think it's a great opportunity. Councillor Bengry?
I'm a lot like Councillor Selk. When something like this, you can visualize it as enhancing, the Remington Center is going to enhance this is going to enhance the
They can work with each
Remington Center.
other.
Yes, the card home, the courthouse museum, all of these things are going to come together.
Yeah,
This is the story of Christ.
yeah.
This is where it started, you know, and we looked at this initiative, Shane Tolman's thing in 2008 when I was on council.
Yeah.
And it was almost a fly right there, but there was no building involved.
Yeah.
And we have a building, we own that tourist information building.
Yeah.
And I can see that I'm in favor of this to start with.
Thank you. Councillor Brown?
I agree with everything that's been said. I think it's a great idea. I'm all about bringing business and people to Curdston and having them spend their money here, because that's what we need.
That's exactly.
And I think that as they were pitching, I could just see it crossing the border and see the mammoths chasing. I could see it all. And I think it gave me goosebumps.
It was very visionary, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I
for me
think,
too.
and the fact that we have Shane Tolman in this community, and he played such an intricate part of the finding and the storytelling of
Yeah.
this. Come on, that's
Yeah.
brilliant.
Now-
To work, to me, to know that he had Grant Tolley with him
Right,
as a manager, a
absolutely.
partner,
That
to
experience.
me, that gives it so much more
Credibility.
weight, because
Agreed.
he has with him someone who understands the rope, how to
Right.
get money,
Absolutely.
and how to find money.
Between the two of them, they have huge strength.
They
And
have it.
so, my point of view, there is great strength in that.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Jeff?
Go ahead, Councillor
Okay, Councillor Selk?
Oh, well, gonna have Jeff's comments, because I'm just gonna
Okay.
make a recommendation.
Where would our money come from, Jim?
Oh, thought.
So I was going to speak to that. When we have these meetings, I only actually have 2 days to turn around the next agenda, because you get it on Friday. But what I'll do is I'll have Alex make a call to Alberta Tourism and Parks and to Travel Alberta. They both have product development departments, and there may be some help there
Okay.
as far as doing the due diligence and doing this whole product development
Yeah.
piece. So we'll explore that right away. If there's a recommendation, I anticipate there is,
Yeah,
we'll explore that right away just to see if we can get some help even on this early stage.
sounds good. Just a comment. I've known Grant for 45 years. We've been best friends. I know his brothers, I've known his family forever. I watched Grant as he developed his professionalism with the government. He's worked with the provincial government for many years. I watched him, he helped develop the library system throughout the Alberta, throughout the province. He's a very knowledgeable person. He knows the ropes, absolutely. And I'm excited. He is a local person. He's not just from Edmonton. He's from Fort Macleod. His father ranched there for years, and so, you know, he's a neat guy, and he knows what he's talking about. And I really trust that. That's a great team. I haven't been excited at a project as much as I have this. This is, to me, is super. And I see something, it's like a vision in my mind, and I'm sure of all of you, that this is something that this town can use, and it'll enhance the businesses and everything. I think it's wonderful. Councillor Selk, you have the floor.
Okay, I'm gonna make a recommendation that we approve in principle their suggestion for a Cardston Trail corridor, Cardston Trail, Gateway to Alberta, and also that.
Phase one.
Phase one, and that also direct administration to see if there's money available through Alberta Tourism.
To cover the 75
Cover the
professional.
75.
And we would help that money if that's not available.
If it's not
We front
available,
that money.
then they'll need to come up with money out of the budget.
Okay. Pardon me?
Can you please make that, John?
I think I got
That I don't
something.
know.
Yeah.
I'm actually
It'll sound really good.
looking like a chap.
It's not better than I did.
Yeah, Councillor, I'm going to Southwest meeting tomorrow night in Claresholm, so I will bring this up and ask them if there's any contribution that they could help with.
You know
because I
something?
They have money too.
What about the Badlands?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Honestly, that is where we should go.
yeah.
I just got a good chunk of our money, maybe we can get something
Get
out
some
of
of it back. Get some of it back.
Wait a thing.
But anyways, I'll still talk to Southwest tomorrow night.
Everyone.
So, is there a chance that you could send me a little bit of information, Jill, about that presentation? Just a brief.
I have nothing.
Okay, Jeff, do you have anything?
Yeah,
Okay,
Shane,
I'll do what I
send us
can.
the presentation.
Yeah, okay. Anyways,
So
so
vote on the motion, then I'll call.
we have a recommendation on the table. All in favor?
So,
Gerry, awesome.
okay, Shane is going to send to Alex either tonight or tomorrow a portion of his presentation.
Okay,
Because I want to include it with my discussion with Alex, with MP Mott's next week.
okay.
So, and also if you could, when you're in Southwest, if you could bring up the whole trade corridor.
Yep. I've actually talked to them about the trade quarter thing already, and
Well,
they're
okay.
kind of on board with that too.
Okay, because when I talked with Jim Bester, he didn't know anything about it, and he was wanting to bring it up.
I sat right beside him and told him about it, so.
Okay, well,
Well, it
Bring it
might
back
need
up.
to hear
Don't bring
it
it back
again,
up
you
again.
know? Sometimes we listen, we hear, but we don't listen.
Yeah.
Conveniently.
yeah, well, we had a good conversation about it at our dinner, so.
Okay. All right, so, okay, so we got some correspondence. If you had a chance to read the
Could we,
correspondence here, any comments on that, Mayor?
just before we go there, could we go with a question or maybe?
You got any questions?
Well,
Fine.
not so much a question, that I'm just wondering, because we had such a wonderful meeting with the county, could we send them maybe a little thank you?
Yeah, that's a
For
great idea.
having met with us?
Yeah,
Would that be something we could do possibly?
eating our food.
Well, as you know, an appreciation.
By the way, we split the bill on that.
Oh, did we?
Yeah.
Okay,
Good
good.
for
Oh, yeah,
us.
sure, they're sure.
70.
I kept it 50/50.
That was a
Just-
terrific
I
meal.
mean, if we could maybe send a thank you. We invited them.
And they came.
They
Yeah,
were
it was wonderful.
nice enough to come and
Yeah,
we had a good time.
great. Do you want to make that recommendation? Or
Yeah, I
just-
would make a recommendation that we send a thank you letter to Revamp Council
Okay,
for the wonderful evening of sharing
okay,
thoughts and.
sounds good. All in favor? Okay, good.
Thank you.
Any other questions or thoughts before we move on? Okay, so, Mayor, do you have anything you want to say about this letter? Mayor, do you have any thoughts on this letter here that you received?
Well,
Or Minister of Justice?
the letter tells me that they are appreciative of our comment. My concern is that we should try to see when we are with a full mayor, if they could do alike, and if we could get some other town to write similar letters to try to let the world know that there is a problem with the model that they're proposing. They can call it equitable or what they want, but in a small town, yes.
That's the first time I've ever seen a written filibuster.
Trust you, Selk.
But, you know, the fact that first of all have acknowledged our letter is encouraging to me.
Really?
Because, yes, it is very encouraging. As Jeff would know, many times we wrote letter and it took 6 months to get an answer after badgering them. So I appreciate the quick return. But on another hand, we can say they understand that we don't like the model
Yeah.
that they're proposing. At least it's already one start. Now it behooves us to try to mobilize other small towns to do the same.
Yeah. Well, at least we do know one thing, there are going to be no changes being fought forward right now. So we're still going to be funded for the time being.
Yeah, but we'll keep an eye.
Keep an eye on it because they're saying next year, the grants expired this year and they're going to be working for next year. So that's where we got to keep the pressure on a little bit. Councillor Bengry?
Mayor, with that in mind, could we send a copy of this letter to AUMA and ask,
So I got it.
They already
did
got it.
they receive it?
It's right here,
I'm sure they like
to carbon copy to
Did
Gerry.
we request them to send it out to other small communities under 5,000?
Well, it would be contrary to their campaign, so I'm not sure they're gonna do that, that's all.
We must initiate the contact, and I think the first
Yeah.
contact we need to do is with the four mayors. At our
Yeah.
next meeting, start talking that, it'll be a good beginning. As for the rest, we'll have to see the county, we surely can engage the county too.
Well, the Reeve might be coming to that next meeting.
Yeah, if he does, I mean, we need to engage them, we need to engage the villages. I mean, all of us are going to pay an awful cost if we don't start to let them know fully the thought is to make it equitable.
Yeah.
Make it fair, but equitable doesn't work.
Good. All right, any other thoughts before we move on? So this last item here, we received a letter from Alberta Municipal Affairs letting us know that we've been approved for a grant of $90,000 under the intermunicipal collaboration component in support of our framework and development. So we have some money now, we'll be able to sit down with the county and we'll be able to discuss with them. We have money to help fund the discussion and the initiatives that will be taking place, and it's a wonderful thing that we've done that.
There's two distinct pieces to this. One is ORS gave us a quote to redo the intermunicipal collaboration, or sorry, the intermunicipal development plan, which is good. We spent a lot of time on that unsuccessfully last couple of years. So that's good, and then the other piece is for a facilitator for the ICF, so that's great as well. McGrath was also approved with theirs with the county, so.
Oh, good.
That's all.
That's good, so we can move forward.
Well, individually,
Yeah.
so we're the managing partner for ours.
Yep.
McGrath's for theirs. The villages already had one approved, actually, at least Glenwood did, I know, so I think everything's good to go there with everyone.
Mayor?
Maybe in the letters that we are sending them, as a thank you, we could maybe add something to the fact that we look forward
Sure.
working with
Because
them.
we got this
now that
grant
we
and-
got the grant.
Yeah.
I know that they're aware we got it, because they got a copy of it,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay,
Oh, that's good.
good. All right, so that's everything. We have some confidential stuff.
No.
We're done?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Awesome. Good.